Searching for the mysterious Gargon, the intruder has already been spotted by Action Man's eagle eyes. The Action Man team set off in a grim race against time, but they are already too late. The dreaded Gargon has been unleashed upon humanity by the intruder, and it's up to the Space Rangers to stop him with their laser gun. With one blast, they halt the maddened Gargon in its tracks.
Action Man!
Another job well done by Action Man.
By 1979, the Star Wars action figure line was doing great business in toy retail outlets throughout Britain and the rest of the world. Action Man and Star Wars were now going head to head in the battle for the boys' toy market. And with a new Star Wars movie sequel due out the following year, Palitoy knew that Action Man needed a radical new marketing tool in order to remain competitive. Palitoy responded to this challenge by completely redesigning Action Man's body. Until now, all the new features for Action Man were innovations to his head or hands. Although the original Action Man body looked flawless when the figure was dressed, his crude physique left something to be desired when shirtless or naked. The production of this redesigned figure had several plus sides. The new model was a marked improvement on the original. It was cheaper to manufacture, and it did away with the old metal rivets, which were becoming a safety concern in the toy industry.
G.I. Joe tooling that came out to the UK that we used to make the first figures on was what we call a family tool, so all the components were on one mould. And if, for instance, one of those components was out of specification or hadn't been moulded 100%, it meant that the actual full shot, all the plastic off the mould, was scrap.
Issued with blue moulded underwear and utilising a new plastic which gave him a tanned look for the fourth innovation of his career, Palitoy released Action Man with his new dynamic physique in 1979, the same year in which Palitoy celebrated its Diamond Jubilee.
As storm clouds gather over Mrs. Rogers' garden, the Action Man gang assemble for the big parade. It's an impressive display of military muscle. And speaking of muscle, just look at Action Man's new fully posable physique. It's chest out and eyes right as the top brass take the salute. They know that whatever the task, Action Man with his dynamic new physique is ready for action.
With the redesign Action Man, it meant that we could make smaller tools and more efficient injection moulding tools, and the cost came down dramatically. You got a better figure, obviously with less cost.
Action Man's fifth and final innovation came in 1981.
Of course, the other thing that came out of the toy fair as well on Action Man, a new thing on Action Man, was the sharpshooter position. That's what John Hawkes, his son, actually came up with that idea.
The new Sharpshooter Action Man figure had a small notch added to the neck of the body, allowing the head to be locked in a position where Action Man could look through the sights of his rifle when firing from the prone position. The new Dynamic Physique Action Man figures were first released in 1979 in several different boxes. Included in the lineup were the Action Man basic figure, soldier, helicopter pilot with a newly designed uniform, and the Frogman.
Yeah, I did that one, and all that range of key figure boxes. I did some stinkers, some I didn't particularly like. Everything was wanted in a rush. I think Bob mentioned earlier on, I did tend to leave everything to the last minute. I had to be under pressure to do anything.
Danger. The evil Captain Zargon has captured an Action Man Space Ranger. But help is on the way. Space Captain to the rescue in the multi-role Space Speeder, which quickly converts into a two-seater space jet. Saved, thanks to the Space Rangers of Action Man.
The Action Man Space Ranger series was issued between 1979 and 1983 and was designed and marketed to compete against the Star Wars range of action figures.
I mean, because Star Wars came out and space was the big thing, you know, it was natural that Action Man went into space and came out with the Space Rangers.
Box figures released in this series included the Space Ranger Captain, Talking Space Ranger Commander, and the enemy of the Space Rangers, Captain Zargon.
Station now visible. Oxygen level falling.
Greg Hughes developed the Action Man Space Ranger concept. This line was supplied with an extensive range of vehicles and equipment so that a child's team of Space Rangers could attempt any manner of outer space operations.
We used to have other characters on the stand. We had somebody dressed up as a Space Ranger, built a suit for him, you know, to dress in. looked like the Space Ranger, the helmet and everything.
Although the Space Ranger line sold very well, it did little to dampen the popularity of Star Wars toys. The irony behind this battle for the boys' toy market was that Palitoy had acquired the license to produce Kenner's Star Wars figures in Britain. So while these two different product lines were jockeying for pole position, Palitoy was in fact competing against itself. As had always been the case throughout his career, Action Man's military-themed products were still his best sellers, when a series of stunning new uniforms were issued in 1979. Released in a packaging design known as locker boxes, the product line included the US Paratrooper and Battle of Britain pilot, a radically redesigned Royal Marine Combat uniform, and the absolutely magnificent Royal Hussars uniform. Although released during the locker box period, most vintage collectors class the Royal Hussars uniform as the last entry into the famous British uniforms line. Available in 1980 for 1 year only, two other uniforms released in locker boxes were the Action Man Long Range Desert Group and Afrika Korps Lance Corporal outfits. Being historical enemies, these opponents complemented each other perfectly. Both of these outfits are extremely rare and highly collectible today.
What we used to do is get somebody like Dave Barnacle or Greg Hughes, when he was with us, to do some illustrations of uniforms, a collection of illustrations of different uniforms, take them into the new products meeting, which would involve design, marketing and sales, mull them over and see which ones they'd like. So they would have picked out, Long Dangerous Resident, that's a good one, that looks exciting, and we'll have the Afrika Korps, as a sort of an enemy to it. So they would have probably chosen those two outfits at that particular time.
The Afrika Korps Lance Corporal was also ideally suited to ride in the new German motorcycle and sidecar available from the Action Man Transport Command. To complement the Afrika Korps Lance Corporal, Palitoy designed an Afrika Korps officer's uniform. Although this uniform appeared in Palitoy's 1981 trade catalogue, the prototype never made it into full production.
But with Action Man, it was based on real life, and we used to take stuff from real life and bring it out. For example, the Iranian siege by the SAS.
As Action Man ventured into the 1980s, Palitoy released a product range that is quite probably the only toy line in history to have been inspired by a terrorist incident.
Dramatic end of the 6-day siege. 19 hostages, including the 3 Britons, are safe. The end came with an assault on the building by the Army's Special Air Services Regiment, the SAS, not long after gunmen had killed 2 hostages and pushed the body of one out onto the embassy steps. They'd threatened to kill another hostage every half hour. It ended with 3 gunmen dead, 1 in hospital and another in police custody.
With footage of the raid broadcast on televisions all over the world, the SAS were propelled into the public consciousness. The mystique surrounding these black-clad Special Forces soldiers reached fever pitch, and Palitoy capitalised on the incident by releasing the first Action Man SAS figure only 4 months after the siege. The SAS key figure was also joined by 3 boxed outfits, which included the SAS Underwater Attack, SAS Parachute Attack, and SAS Secret Mission Equipment Set. When combined with the SAS key figure, these completely black outfits made Action Man look modern, professional, and ready for action. Palitoy had more in store for this utterly impressive lineup. Not satisfied with just issuing the figure and outfits, they also released an SAS airstrike helicopter and SAS beach and attack assault craft. The popularity of this series was so great that from this point on, Palitoy released the Action Man Talking Commander with a new SAS cap badge. Although the Action Man SAS range did outstanding business at retail, Sadly, it would later be recognised as the last classic series of a distinguished career.
The SAS, where Action Man probably looked at and played the best, because of the role that the SAS took. You had dinghies and you had all kinds of other accessories that went with it. This is really the first time we did a combat set with all the periphery stuff.
Strawberry shortcake dolls and products were a product of Palitoys. It was a Kenner product that we took from Kenner but just repackaged in Palitoy packaging, exactly the same as Kenner's in the States. But unfortunately they were moulded in the same factory in Hong Kong as they were moulded in the SAS plastic components. So some of that strawberry essence got into the black plastic for the SAS. Open up the pack, they got a good whiff of strawberry shortcake. Not very macho at all. Made a good story though.
The last new range of outfits released by Palitoy in 1982 continued the modern theme that had been developed by the SAS range. This line was entitled Action Man Special Team and included the Ground Assault, Underwater Assault and Arctic Assault sets. The Special Team was a huge change in Palitoy's thinking. This range was not based upon historic World War II uniforms or modern paratrooper or SAS uniforms, which had been the principle for military uniforms up till then. Researching and copying uniforms was out. Greg Hughes used his imagination to present concept sketch ideas of what soldiers might look like 15 to 20 years into the future. Marketing accepted these designs and they were developed by the design department to allow the Action Man product range to shift with the times. A fourth outfit, the Missile Assault, joined the Special Team in 1983. This would turn out to be one of the last two outfits that Palitoy would ever produce for Action Man. Because the Missile Assault was only manufactured for a few months, it is now one of the rarest Action Man outfits ever released. By 1983, Action Man's motorised fleet was rapidly expanding, but as he entered 1984, it appeared that Britain's favourite plastic hero might be running out of fuel.
In the early 1980s, the rising cost of petroleum-based plastic products meant that 12-inch Action Man figures were struggling to compete financially against the 3 3/4-inch Star Wars figures that were selling for far less at retail. In 1982, Palitoy began reissuing Action Man in a 3 3/4-inch format. The range was initially called Action Force, although it still bore the Action Man logo. Although the product line sold well, in fact it was Top Boy's toy in November 1982, it was not nearly as popular as Star Wars following two blockbuster films.
The latest attacks, led by Baron Ironblood and his evil forces, seen here in exclusive coverage, have forced the country to take action. With me in the studio tonight is the squad leader from the newly formed SAS and the head of the new Z-Force, Captain Grant Campbell, who will be taking command of their combined troops at a secret destination later tonight. More news as it's made from New Action Force.
Collectors have speculated for years as to whether or not Action Man's demise was brought about by Star Wars. The reality is that in 1983, Action Man was still selling in great numbers, and the Palitoy team had a whole new range of products planned for the London Toy Fair in 1984, which would expand the Special Team concept.
The proven marketing method of razor and razor blade was to evolve in 1984.
John Hawkes had the idea of doing Action Man completely different with these vehicles, these three vehicles. Now these designs were created by a company called Raffo and Pape down in Hitchin. As a department, we had to make sure that they could be moulded. I worked on the watercraft. Ken worked on the Jeep, and I think it was Peter Allen out of Airfix, he worked on the tank.
The range was to be named the Action Man Wolfpack. However, Palitoy soon realised that the Raffo and Pape designs would not be economical to manufacture.
Yeah, I can remember having board and looking at the thing, and it seemed that was the end of it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It said stop, as if, right. I've just cracked it.
With only a few weeks left until Toy Fair 1984, the Palitoy design department had to drop everything else and start work on new Action Man prototypes, a process that would normally take months, not weeks.
We were also working on modifying the the assault tower and the helicopter and moulded them in the same colour scheme and put an extra little features on, like missile launchers on the side of the helicopter and things on the... And then we did a complete range of outfits in different camouflage material, different sort of colours than we did before. They were shown at the Toy Fair in 1984. But after the Toy Fair, those were chopped as well. They never saw the light of day.
In the end, it came down to profit forecasts. Palitoy received a fax from US company General Mills, who had owned the Palitoy division since 1968. General Mills executives did not believe Action Man could achieve the company's projected sales figures, so the outcome of that fax was the end of Action Man after 18 years of production, and the beginning of the end for Palitoy.
So everything that was left on for Action Man, old stock that was left in the warehouse and so forth, that was sold off during 1984. And once that was gone, that was the end of Action Man. The Toy Fair was in January 84. The design department was closed in August of the same year. So those few months leading up to August, we were still working on Action Force and doing some work on that, but we realised that Action Man had gone, and it looked like the company was going to go, General Mills was going to basically use American products, bring them over to England, repackage them, no development in the UK. So it was a bit of a sad time, really.
Protective of Action Man's legacy, General Mills ordered that all production tooling was to be destroyed.
All the tools that Palitoy owned, including all the Action Man tools, were put in that area where the old moulding machines used to be, all lined up. And Chris Ward had the task of destroying them with a big lump hammer, being supervised by some sort of government official of some sort. When a company that makes toys or makes any product like that, when it gets rid of its design and development, it's on its last legs. You know, it's putting a product in a box, putting a logo on the front and then some sort of illustration and getting out in the market, trying to flog it. And it loses its heart. The company loses its heart.
Palitoy ceased trading completely in 1986 and was sold to Kenner Parker Toys. Hasbro, the US toy manufacturing giant who had invented G.I. Joe 22 years earlier, eventually acquired the Kenner Company and Palitoy's Colville factory and copyrights in 1991, which led to the final closure of the Colville factory in 1994.
Dr. X turns up the heat, but Action Man Bowman has him in his sights. With working bow and arrows, he really fires to shaft X's plans. Action Man, the greatest hero of them all. Get the point, X. Action Man Bowman.
With the Action Man name now owned by Hasbro, the iconic British figure was relaunched in its original 12-inch format in 1993. Hasbro's Action Man run proved to be just as popular at retail as he had been during Palitoy's era, lasting an impressive 13 years. Today, Hasbro still owns the Action Man trademark, and although some specials have been released since 2006, as yet, no new figures have been released since 2009. Hasbro's Action Man became an inspiration for a whole new generation of youngsters, and he became a legend in his own right. During Hasbro's era, Action Man evolved from the military tough guy of the 1960s and 70s, and into a kind of extreme sports eco-warrior, who was massively popular with the children of the 90s, but who was rather disappointing to his legion of adoring adult fans, who are now collecting the original vintage figures with an almost fanatical obsession.
Started collecting as an adult in 1996.
In your wildest dreams would you think that after this finishes, there's going to be people out there collecting this sort of thing.
I got my first Action Man in around 78 or 79. It was Christmas. I had a tank, I had the Scorpion tank, and I had a 1980 box Soldier.
And I held this thing in my hands, and I was instantly taken back 25 years to those days when, you know, short trousers and the hot summers of the 70s.
Les Story contacted me and said, Bob, we've got this Action Man convention down in Bovington Camp, where there's a big tank museum down in Dorset. So I picked Brian up, picked Bill up, and we drove down there and had 2 nights down there.
I think as a child my favourite was probably the parachute regiments. So I can remember opening that one.
Because the first time, I think the first time probably me and Bill met sort of collectors.
I think I've got a reasonably sized collection, to put it politely. There's what's in this room, which I think is somewhere around 300 figures, but that does include G.I. Joe.
And to get a group of collectors there who are quite enthusiastic and far more knowledgeable out in the range than I
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Me asking questions, I have no idea.
But to me it's priceless. It's the hours of fun and enjoyment assembling this collection, going out to toy fairs, meeting people, chatting about, you know, this thing that we all like to collect.
I mean, if we'd realised it was going to be a collectible item, we would have been going down with the cars down to Baxtergate, wouldn't we?
I mean, all the war films and the comics and everything we used to read, that's kind of the stuff that I remember most. And I think there's still something that after all these years, that still resonates with me.
And there's just endless fun you can have with it.
There's just so much you can do with Action Man. I don't think there was any other toy around at the time, or in fact still, that you can do that with.
It seems to be Action Man is kind of like the icon, I guess, for those memories.
But Bill really, he couldn't believe it that these people were collecting Action Man. He couldn't believe it. We drove home afterwards and he couldn't, you know, he was saying he couldn't believe that they were collecting Action Man after all the years we've been developing it all and so forth.
After battling leukemia, Bill Pugh passed away a short time after the first ever Action Man convention at the Bovington Tank Museum. And so it seems that Action Man is destined to endure. One collector in particular is intent on ensuring that the original Palitoy Action Man line lives on. Vaughan Millard is an avid toy collector who now customises old Palitoy Action Man items and turns them into outfits that may have been produced by Palitoy if they had continued developing the Action Man range.
Mum went up into the loft and found our original 6, and being as I was a general toy collector at the time anyway, and that just stemmed from there because I completely forgot about them. The first custom I ever done was for a friend of mine as a special commission by just doing what the quartermaster cards intended you to do by chop and change, and then it just snowballed from there. I try in my customs to only keep it vintage Action Man in uniform and accessories. If it's not available, then I make it from scrap, but I try to keep it in the Palitoy line. I've tried to continue the line where they've left off. The one custom in particular that everybody rants about is the 17th 21st Lancer, but there was a hell of a lot of work in the horse, getting the horse to rear up like that. The long range Desert Group Jeep in particular, the inspiration for that came from the Action Man book, which photographs in there the prototype. The netting is normal camouflage netting, just literally bleached, and takes the colour out and is quite acceptable. The Scramble Pilot has always been the favourite from the childhood, and some 30 years later I've managed to get the jet plane. It just came to me one day out of the blue, and I thought while I was at it, I'll have that long-awaited Scramble Pilot jet plane. I want the customs to be able to be picked up and examined, produced as Palitoy intended.
The popularity of the original Palitoy Action Man can be attributed to his versatile nature. Most action figures released since his time have been a merchandise tie-in with movies, TV shows, sporting characters or comics. However, Action Man was never confined to a particular environment or time period. He was an everyman. Dress him in the right outfit and equip him with the right gear, and he could explore the South Pole, fight in World War II, land on the moon, or achieve any other feat that a boy's imagination could muster. It developed into a toy relationship.
A great toy to work with over those 17 years.
This endless line of accessories opened up a world of possibilities for kids, and the ability to customise Action Man with various pieces of equipment empowered the youth of Britain. Watch young children interact with Action Man, and you will witness true escapism as they recreate historical events and play out boys' own adventures in their backyards.
I think everybody at Pallet Toy, it was just a job really. It was an enjoyable job working on toys.
It's always seemed worthwhile because when you set them up in windows, people's faces lit up when they saw them. Got great enjoyment from it.
It's nice to see that there's still around Action Man, and that people have still got a great interest in it, and a lot of satisfaction in the fact that it was a product that was well made.
And I mean, it sort of highlighted my life really, I suppose.
It's been 15 minutes of fame. Still is my 15 minutes of fame.
It's one of the successful stories of our time.
But I think Action Man has got that longevity, the name Action Man. I think it's eternal.
Action Man was one of the greatest fictional heroes of the latter 20th century, and as his vintage career ended in 1984, he left behind a legacy that is admired to this day. Action Man had soul. He had a dignity that is hard to define. A British patriot, a noble adventurer. Action Man has become ingrained in our national psyche and our folklore. Action Man was my friend, and he became a friend to millions of other children the world over. He may currently be retired from service, but I don't believe we've seen the last of him.
Action Man is here. Action Man is here. On land, at sea, and in the air, in action everywhere. Tough and fearless, he's a fighter. No assignment ever troubles him on high ground. He's there, or sweeping through the air. On the high seas, he's in action. You'll find him anywhere. Action Man's his name. Where there's trouble, set it right, that's his aim. The universal fighter who will carry the flag of justice through. Give him a rousing cheer, he's Action Man. Action Man is here. Action Man is here. Action Man is here. On land, at sea, and in the air. In action everywhere. Tough and fearless, he's a fighter. No assignment ever troubles him. Action Man's his name. Where there's trouble, set it right, that's his aim. The universal fighter who will carry the flag of justice through. Give him a rousing cheer, he's Action Man. Action Man is here.